to be organized on Sundays. So the
Can you
Monday
turn?
is like
Okay.
Martin ready. Hi.
Morning, Henryk. Morning, Michela.
Morning.
Hi.
We
hi.
will start. We will start in a second.
Okay.
Good
Yeah,
to see you there.
Yeah, I couldn't see you, Päivi.
I think she's hiding behind the little man with a cardboard box.
We will start in a second.
Because Päivi is on site, yeah.
Yes, that's right, yes. So she's juggling the two of us online and the two people in the room.
Yeah. And then hopefully we're gonna see them all.
Tatu, can you hear me?
Oh, now, yes.
There's a big delay.
We can hear you. There is some small delay.
No, Henryk, she's talking to the technical team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Give me a second. There's a big delay.
Yes, very big.
Hei, siellä on valtava viive äänessä. Mun puhumiset ja heidän puhumisensa tulee tosi pitkällä viiveellä nyt, ja he ei näe meitä. Okei. Ei, minun puheeni on viiveellä ja heidän puheensa. Molempien puhe tulee ehkä 4-5 sekunnin viiveellä. Okei, mä menen sinne alas, mutta pystyttekö te kuulemaan mut? They are trying to sort this out.
Latest, now it seems okay. Can two participants speak something?
Hello, everyone.
Hi there. Hello.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, problem solved. Henryk and Michela, do you see us here now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we do.
Perfect.
There is a bit of a delay visually, but audio seems to be coming through now more quickly.
Okay. Problem solved.
Perfect.
Henryk and Michela, do you see us here now? Tatu and Henkka,
Yeah,
the
we
problem
see.
is not solved. It's still a delay with my voice. Tatu and Henkka, the problem is not solved. It's still a delay with my voice.
It will reach eventually the voice and the message.
Always technique.
Yes. Again, to everyone, everyone here in Arcticum and people behind the stream as well, and of course, obviously, with all our 4 invited experts. This is a third dialogue in a set of 4, and I'm very happy to welcome all 4 invited experts on stage. The 2 of them are in the Zoom room and the 2 of them here in Arcticum. We will discuss today or continue discussing the same theme we initiated yesterday. And I will give a bit of a background for the thematics related for today. The first thing important to say is that Arctic Design Week, when it was founded 13 years ago, the basis of it was the concept of Arctic design, and the concept very strongly relates to, from the early days, to sustainable development of the Arctic region. And that was already 13 years ago. And of course, we know that during the years, the importance of paying attention to sustainable development has only grown stronger. And obviously, with climate change and climate change mitigation, it's more actual than ever today. The Design Week always has an annual theme. This year it's inspiring awareness. The thinking behind that is that we really want to help our clients, our visitors, to understand the relevant challenges the whole world is facing and also the design community is facing. And with this, we also picked a specific topic for these 4 discussions, dialogues we are doing during the Design Week, and that's reconnecting with nature. And I know that there are among the invited experts, you already know what I'm talking about, and we will come back to this later during this dialogue. Reconnecting with nature is a theme actively discussed in Europe at the moment, from many respects, but especially from the point of view of the new European Bauhaus initiative. And the new European Bauhaus, we discussed this in our 2 earlier dialogues as well, and also with Alessandro and the Italian Design Day yesterday, that it's a new approach to something that has existed a while in Europe already. The original Bauhaus movement started 100 years ago. The new European Bauhaus is different, but what is similar between them certainly is that we pay attention to the ability of art, architecture and design to take part in finding solutions to the most pressing challenges we are facing. And at the moment, of course, the most pressing challenge, one of the most pressing challenges, of course, in the light of what has happened during the past weeks as well, is climate change. And reconnecting with nature is related to the Bauhaus initiative from the point of view that there was an exceptionally strong and long co-design phase about a year ago related to everyone in Europe, and with the idea that Europeans, both individuals, organizations, had an opportunity to talk about, to tell themselves what in their minds the new European Bauhaus should be about. And the Commission, the European Commission, received more than 2,000 inputs. And when that bunch of input was analyzed, reconnecting with nature was one of the themes related to the initiative and to climate change mitigation. People in Europe, organizations in Europe, found important themselves. So it was not decided top down, it was decided bottom up. And reconnecting with nature is very relevant to the Arctic region, of course. And we wanted to take that topic to be discussed, the interpretations also, what reconnecting with nature means, what it means to us here in the Arctic, what it means to other bodies, individuals, perhaps in some other parts of Europe. So that's the general topic. And today we will discuss especially collaboration in this context, because we all know, of course, that without collaboration not too much gets done, but what kind of collaboration should we encourage? What would be meaningful in the context as well? So that's the framework for the topic today. And I encourage everyone here in Arcticum, behind the streaming, you will have the chat in your use. Here you can just raise your voice, and you two there in the Zoom room, I encourage you also to really take part in the dialogue, in the sense that feel free to comment anyone at any point. So we try to create a lively discussion on the topic, of which I'm certain everyone has a lot of ideas. So the first step, obviously, is to introduce the invited experts. And what I would like you to tell us is what you do, and maybe a bit about what is actual in your work at the moment in relation to reconnecting with nature, sustainable development in general. And maybe if you want to share a personal note as well, feel free to do that. And I would let's begin with Michela.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I hope you are not hearing me with any delay. I am privileged to be part of this incredible group of the high-level roundtable for the new European Bauhaus that has been advising President von der Leyen and Commissioners Ferreira and Gabriel, and more recently also Commissioner Breton, on the new European Bauhaus initiative and on the core principles that are behind it, which are sustainability, inclusion, and aesthetics. My background is design. I'm Royal College of Art in London, so that's where I graduated from, and I worked as a designer for very many years, always looking at systemic change in my design. And this has very much been translated to the work that I do with the European Commission. So Päivi knows me really well, because we have both been part of the advisory groups for the culture creative sector. And as you probably know by now, the culture creative sector is really center stage now in terms of instigating the transformations that are required for the European transition towards the Green Deal. And this is something that has evolved because we have been able to demonstrate with evidence from, from design practice, the really important facilitation that we can create with our methods in terms of this transition. So I hope this gives you kind of a broader overview. The thing that I really do work on very, very actively is particularly, and this is really interesting as a designer, in data-driven systems and in systems that we are now constructing to drive the future economy, where we are really looking at what are the systems of resilience, what are the systems of agreements, and how do we build systems on top of societal values that we particularly hold dear in Europe. So I hope this kind of gives you an overview.
Thank you, Michela. If I'm not mistaken, you have a connection to Sweden as well?
I'm sitting in Umeå.
Yes, that's what I thought. And maybe later I would like to come back with what you do in Sweden as well. If I'm not mistaken, you have been involved in developing Bauhaus-related actions there as well. And as we are here now in the Arctic, Umeå in Sweden is sort of the border of the Sami culture as well. So, and the indigenous people living both in Finland and Sweden and Norway. So we might touch and come back to that, but let's do that later. Okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. And then Henryk, I know that at the moment, or I believe at the moment you are in Poland. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
So the word is
So-
yours.
Okay, hi everyone. So very briefly, I've been working at the intersection of design and business for more than 15 years, 18 years counting in non-governmental organization work. That's my background. And around 6-7 years ago, I started investing my attention into sustainable design and circular design. I'm leading a design consultancy that it's called Change Pilots. We focus on facilitating change when change is hard or not understood as sustainability value for business. We have also a consultancy in Sweden, in Stockholm, called Next Agents. So it's like a mirroring but totally different context. Because it's Sweden and Poland is a little bit different planet in terms of sustainability. I also bring a perspective from strategic design management. That's a second field of my work that I studied and worked at Parsons in New York. And we have a think tank in Poland, circulardesign.pl. And I manage a conference on program matters for last 7 years. And the conference is called Design Talks Business. From this year on, it will be fully focused on sustainability in business. So the business value of sustainability. And as a consultancy, we work for companies like Patagonia, who already are aware, or other aware companies, but also companies who would like to bring in the circular value of design to their business. So I'm also a yoga teacher, and I run long distance runs. That's on a private note. Thank you.
And to continue on the private note, I happen to know that not that long ago you spent a while in Kenya for running.
True.
So
we try to not be the smartest in the room. So we try to go and always stay with those who we can learn from. And Kenyans are amazing, not only runners, but also just on a very inspiring athletes. In exchange, I did some yoga for Kenyan runners. That was a beautiful exchange for 5 months.
great, thank you, Henryk. And if we continue with Katariina.
Hello. And thank
Take
you.
the microphone, please. You don't need to
Done.
do anything.
Okay.
It's on.
Thanks for the invitation, Päivi, and the Arctic Design Week. It's a privilege to be here for me too, and to discuss with you all. And I am originally from Lapland. My name is Katariina Imporanta, and I am a founder and CEO of my 10-month-old consultancy company called Kaltio Creative. And I've been working with branding, marketing, concept development, business development throughout my career in different design agencies. But my background is originally in art education and fine arts. And yes, what I do, I help companies to get funding from the funding organizations. So this is the job that everybody hates, I guess. So everyone really gets afraid when they see the funding instructions and also the system where you have to fill in your company's information. So I have been finding my sweet spot there to be kind of an interpreter between the companies and organizations and then the funding organizations. So I help the companies and organizations to develop their ideas and sell them kind of to the funders. And as you know, the sustainability is a really big factor in today's funding, and also in the future it's going to be even more and more. So if you want to get funding for your business or ideas, you have to be sustainable. So I also help the companies to develop their business to be more sustainable, and how you tell about it to the funding organizations. So thank you.
Thank you, Katariina. A question. I know that your current company, Kaltio Creative, is quite new, but perhaps you could tell us also what did you do before, because you have an extensive career as well.
Yes. So I have been working with many things. How I ended up to be working with concept development is from my previous company. More than 10 years ago, we did some clothing with my 3 ex-business partners, and we made clothing that were dealing with Lapland's topics, but not like nature and Instagrammable themes, but more like the places getting empty, losing inhabitants, factories closing down, and this kind of change of the environment and infrastructure. So we made, for example, this night train long johns collection that was kind of hot topic at that time, because the small town, my hometown Kemijärvi here, was about to lose its railway connection to the south, and that would have been a death strike to that small place. So with design means we wanted to kind of talk about the topic, and then it became a small success and we founded a company. And after that I've been working with in different design agencies with branding. For example, rebranding of Arcticum was one of my works with my colleagues. And then I was also working in House of Lapland for 2 years, leading the international tourism marketing of Lapland. And that was very eye-opening experience. And maybe my personal values differ a bit with the views of how the tourists are wanted to come here to Finland or to Lapland. So I found it out that maybe my personal values are there in creative design and more sustainable development. So I changed it. I went back to design agency, and and now I have my own company.
Yeah, thank you, Katariina. I think a few important notes here. Your first company business, which was related to fashion industry in a way, but in a very critical manner, because I moved to Lapland personally. At the time you were working in that first company, and for me, coming from the south, it was a fantastic company which was you didn't take it the easy way out.
No.
You were commenting the challenges in Lapland, and even if you say that was not directly related to, let's say, the nature of Lapland, but in fact I think you commented a lot about in fact the nature of Lapland in both senses of the word, and even afterwards I think the work you have done has been very critical and demonstrative even, and that bears a direct relationship to what we are talking today as well. So thank you for that. And last but not least, Alessandro Colombo from Italy.
Thank you so much. Hello everybody, good morning. I'm very glad to be here in Rovaniemi in Finland. I arrived yesterday as an ambassador and testimonial of Italian design. You know that Italian Design Day has been established in 2016 to develop the knowledge of Italian design in the world. Every year in 100 towns in the world, 100 testimonials are going to talk about Italian design, but especially to put relation between people, designer, and countries. And I'm very glad that this year we are here in presence and not only by internet device. The theme of our design day is regeneration. And regeneration, kind of regeneration, is the new process that we have with nature, with the natural environment, and with the earth. From my personal point of view, I am architect, designer, and teacher at Politecnico of Milan. This is a basic point of our job. I have only to say that my company, that has been established 30 years ago, I'm quite old, the name is Terra, that means Earth. So Earth, I think that is not only our planet, not only our environment, but it's also the starting point of our job. So I'm very glad to be here to discuss with you about these themes.
Thank you, Alessandro. And I think it's noteworthy, actually, what you said, that since 2016, Italian Design Day has been organized, and in a huge number of cities around the world already. But what is noteworthy here as well is that the Italian state, the foreign Ministry of Foreign Affairs, nominated Alessandro as the ambassador of Italian design. And I think this is something we in Finland could learn about as well. So you knew how to start communicating about design quite early already, of course. What I paid attention in what you all have said so far is things that are related to earlier discussions as well. Values actually is one thing that has been raised up and talked about in the previous dialogues as well. And we had a first dialogue where we had local companies who work around sustainability related issues and circular economy related issues. They are in different stage of development, obviously. Some of the companies that were present here were very new one, not startups, but almost startups. And they had taken up sustainability related issues and strategies from day one. And we had a company which is 120 years old, obviously started with a different approach, has started to develop their strategies actively during the past years. But what was common between all these 6 companies actually was, and they told the story separately, that the reason they feel strongly and they take actions in relation to climate change mitigation, circular economy, sustainability, is their values. Their values guide them to do that and support the work. And I think this is important. Henryk, you mentioned your long-term collaboration with Patagonia. I think we all know and agree that Patagonia is one of the companies who has been working seriously and long-term in relation to sustainability-related issues. And what they said, these companies, what they said in relation to collaboration, and they said collaboration networks are important, and they work with companies with similar values. And this is, of course, good and certainly develops good outcomes. But the question is, should you also work with those who don't have the same values? Katariina, you said, and that was important, and I know the story, of course. You said that your values didn't match too well with one of the organizations you collaborated. So how do you work about? How can you manage? How do you go further? How can you work with companies, organizations that don't share your values? Or should you leave that to someone else? So I would be very happy to have a comment from all of you on this respect, because I believe this is a really important issue. So can I start, Henryk? Can I ask you first? What should we do? How do you do this yourself? Do you leave the other value-based companies to someone else? Do you try to work with them? And what would be your advice to all of us?
So thank you for that question. So we work with both, I call them aware companies, so the ones that we don't have to convince of the value of sustainability, and those who are contacting us because of different needs, not sustainability goals. And both of them we accept, and we use an algorithm actually that has 3 parameters to choose the projects that we engage with, just because we decided based on experience that we want to engage in a projects that do not have a negative impact on 3 elements, and this is sustainability, personal growth of us as individuals, because we join projects, sometimes not whole team, but just few people. And then it's important that there is a positive or neutral impact on our development and personal growth, and also development and personal growth of organization as a whole. So if the company, based on our initial talks, working with them won't have a positive or neutral impact on sustainability, we choose not to engage. And we had several briefs that we did not engage with. And this in return helped us to keep the space for making work that has a positive impact on at least one of these parameters. But it's okay also for us to have a neutral. So if we know that we can estimate that we are not doing harm to one of these elements, then it's fine. Also, we are very well connected, and that's in the topic of collaboration, that we pass the projects on to others, and others pass the projects to us. So we are within our networks, we are ones with some hyper specialization, and then if the project reaches our partners and it's related to, let's say, circularity or some aspects of sustainability, it's very often recommended for us.
Okay, thank you, Henryk. I think that was really interesting. So all in all, if I'm understanding you correctly, interpreting you correctly, you decide whether you work with your clients or not. Is this based on the algorithm? Is this an open process to the possible clients as well?
Not always. It depends on which stage. Because once we meet and we are honest, then we are honest once we meet. And sometimes on a brief and an initial talk, we just pass it on. We say we are not experts in that field. We pass it on to someone because basically it's not good matchmaking. But once we meet, we are very honest, and we had that situations that we said, this is what we can do. If we engage, we will pay attention to this kind of parameters, and this is the way our process goes. If you are not interested, we have someone who has other parameters.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Any comments, any questions related to this approach Henryk's consultancy is using? Not at the moment. Michela, if I may...
It's a very delicate and a kind of privilege, so we've been evaluating this after some time, because it's not that common, and we want to be more transparent with that.
Okay, that's definitely a good thing. Basically, this is a course about trust. Values are always related to trust issues as well. Michela, what is your thinking on the theme? Do you have to share the values or not? I'm asking this from the point of view of your own initiatives and your own businesses, but also from the point of view of the work the high-level advisory board for the Bauhaus does, because the ambition of the new European Bauhaus is to create change, actually, and be part of transformation. So how does this relate to the issue of similar values, trust, relate to the work the advisory board does?
Well, it is a very, very pertinent and important question. When we were asked to initiate the process, so we were asked, the high-level roundtable was asked to initiate the co-creation process with the concept paper at the very beginning. The first thing that we jointly decided to do is to map our values. That was our starting point. And we decided to do it through a very agile, so dynamic co-creation process that was a mix of a Pecha Kucha format, which you probably know, which is like 20 slides, 20 seconds each. But because we're all very, very busy people, and there are 18 of us, you know, you probably know that we include people like Bjarke Ingels, who's flying around all over the world designing buildings, and people like Olafur Ellison, who's got 1 million projects on, and things like that. So as a result, we decided to do three ideas in 1 minute, and they all had to map our values, and we mapped them all out. And the first thing that transpired from seeing the links between them was a very strong line of justice. And this was clearly our priority. Everything was going to be derived from that. And the second round that we did was we wanted to extract outcomes, ideal outcomes from those values. And the line that came through was learning through doing. That was really driving everything. So again, learning from prototyping and from practice, which is very, very strongly connected to design methodology, as you can imagine, but this time applied to, of course, where do we drive the paradigms that the European policy is made from. So what's really remarkable about the European Bauhaus initiative is that we are really feeding policy directly from grassroots creative experimentation and from grassroots co-creation. And in this sense, grassroots communities will always tell you that these are the fundamental things, that first you need to have ethical principles and moral principles that you build on. And the second thing is you need to try it out, you need to prototype it, and you need to see directly how this influences human beings, but also broader ecosystems. And so as a result of this, what transpired in our concept paper, which is available online, and you're very welcome to look at it and refer to it, which is still, you know, a work in progress. We never say anything is closed. We leave it open for inputs. This is the whole point about co-creation, is that we have remarkably managed to shift these non-believers to actually consider some very new paradigms for them. And I will illustrate this. We are talking about pan-European industry, for example. And you will have in the Arctic region a very, very big industry, and it's very important for industry. Globally, it's important globally. I know that from living in Umeå and from interacting with this region, people tend to be rather modest about it. But the truth is it has global impact. And so we really need to think at that scale. And what is really, really interesting is that industry declared Industry 4.0 automation as their main paradigm in 2017. And immediately people from the creative and cultural sector reacted with, well, we should actually be more human-centric in these environments and actually consider what impact this has on not just jobs, but also on how it impacts human beings in general. And so very quickly, the paradigm within the European Commission shifted. I mean, when I say quickly, this is 3 years. Within 3 years or 3 or 4 years, we arrived to something called Industry 5.0, human-centric. But already in the new European Bauhaus, when we started discussing our values, we went beyond human ecosystems. So basically considering all species as something that we should incorporate in our in how we think about industry. And so very soon, I believe we will have Industry 6.0 ecosystemic because we are driving this change. Now, this is not something that happens so quickly without having this powerful instrument at the center, which is feeding these new paradigm shifts. The thinking is really changing at that level. The similar situations are with, for instance, things like inclusion, which is incredibly important. You mentioned, for instance, the Sami culture. That is incredibly important for this region, for the Arctic region. For us, inclusion is not like, let's tick the box of including some of the representatives from Sami culture. This is not how we look at it. We actually think about it in terms of radical inclusion, which is we don't have categories of people. We have places where we converge. That's our first starting point. And this is also something that has gone in. And the other one is to be beyond Eurocentric. So this is something that I have mentioned already. And, you know, Rovaniemi, I mean, it must be so funny to hear when someone says to you, reconnect with nature. Nature is integral part of the life in Rovaniemi, always has been. So what are we reconnecting with here? What has changed is the scale, because not just the scale of climate change, but the scale at which all of our systems operate. So even though you are in Rovaniemi, you are connecting to a global network of supply and distribution chains that is really quite overwhelming, and we need to address this because it has a massive impact on us. So I will stop here because otherwise I take time from everybody else.
Thank you, Michela. As always, you bring up very relevant topics and very interesting thinking. I think that was a really clear thought and a good message as well when you connected to Rovaniemi and the thought, the idea of reconnecting with nature. Indeed, you are correct. For many of us here, it sounds as if it doesn't really have a meaning, because connecting with nature is a necessity here. We would have been sort of thrown out of the earth long ago if people living in the Arctic, whether indigenous people or other people, would not have been connected to nature. So in that sense, you're absolutely correct. But what was important was the note you said about the change in scale. And that, of course, is relevant. That is something we hear as well, as much as anyone else elsewhere need to think that what does reconnecting with nature as a scale issue mean? And there, actually, what I've been thinking, and what I personally believe is that communities and organizations, even businesses in the Arctic, would have a lot to give to other parts of the world as well. So maybe we are a bit, let's say, nearsighted here, because connection to nature for us is so self-evident that perhaps we don't even recognize and know how much we know and how useful that knowledge could be to someone else. Indigenous people, of course, is a big part of this discussion, but it's related to all the communities in the Arctic region, definitely as well. So maybe on this note, I think it would be very good for Arctic Design Week, for example, to think about this and to consider how we could take steps further in this aspect. So that's certainly important. Michela, you also said that a shift, certainly shifts in paradigm in relation to the Bauhaus initiative are taking place, have already taken place. But could you tell us in practical terms what happens with organizations, businesses, when they shift their thinking? What really makes them tick and make that change?
I mean, obviously there are several things that are contributing factors here. I mean, the pandemic has been one of them that has demonstrated that you can actually completely destroy your supply chain by not being aware of just how connected you are to other ecosystems. People have been having a very narrow view in large industry organizations as to where their supply, what the supply chain entails. And they were literally linear in their thinking in terms of just the raw materials. But even when it comes to critical raw materials, for example, we know that there is a huge crisis. The recent horrific situation we have with the Ukraine has pushed that even further, because of course the supplies from Russia have been and still are in place. Within the organization, they have realized some of the weaknesses in their thinking already because of the pandemic. And it is the right moment, both for the sake of the climate situation, the huge crisis we are facing, but several crises that we are facing simultaneously, that we actually inform and create systems that can track and trace, for instance, life cycles of materials or life cycles of products. Which are now essential, for instance, in our data systems. So there's been a huge shift in reprioritization. Goodness, that's a very difficult word. Of these kinds of processes, because all the data-driven systems that, and let's face it, all industries are now data industries. For a long time, some of them were reluctant to admit that that's a fact. But all of them have shifted to data-driven systems. Now, when we deploy those, we need to actually be able to create systems that bridge disciplines, and this is an absolute key, where we can actually interoperate between different types of suppliers from different kinds of domains and track and trace and monitor the sustainability of materials and products. So this is one of the things that the organizations have moved towards in a big way, I would say, in the past 2 to 3 years.
Thank you, Michela. Let's keep in mind the word interoperate. We'll come back to that. I want to ask more about it from you. But now, Katariina, you had this personal experience. So what do you think about the notes you've heard from Henryk and Michela, and what are your own thoughts about the topic?
Yes, I think it's a very important question. My personal experience is, and I feel that if you share the same values, you can develop your cooperation further and more faster. So you work from the same basis, and that's of course much more joyful and happier, and the ideas get better, you get better views. That's my personal experience. But I still think that it's also important to work with people in different levels who don't share the same values, because then you also learn from their thinking and you increase your understanding of others. Also, if you work in a field of customer insight, of course, it's important to also understand people who don't think the same way you think. They might have different values. I think it's also important to understand how you can maybe communicate with them to maybe change their thinking. Or well, my background is in marketing, so I might use the marketing words, but like to persuade them to make a better decision, for example. If they're buying a product, maybe it's when you understand how they think, what are their values, what appeals to them, how would they choose the more sustainable product from their way of thinking. Well, at my own work at the moment, when we are working with funding applications and business developing, concept developing, we often come to the values very quickly because they are measured in the applications, and of course we have to discuss them. And what I've found out that, well, I have been privileged to work with very nice customers and people who I share the same values with, and even if my customers have been that kind of people that don't immediately express their values, they are thinking, many of them are thinking in a very sustainable way, but you just kind of have to encourage them to see that they are actually very sustainable in their thinking, and they should also communicate more about that in their thinking and what are they doing.
Thank you, Katariina. So one of the key points you were saying is understanding the values, even trying to understand the values, even if they are not own, and then you get ahead from there, if I understood correctly what you said. Alessandro, you come from a very design-oriented country with a very long and deep history in all aspects. You were talking about that in the during the Italian Design Day as well. So what are your reactions, reflections on collaboration, and do you have to share the same values, or can you work from the basis of different values as well? How is the situation with your experience on this?
Yeah. But if the question is values, in my opinion, the question is values are the starting point or they are the target point. I mean, of course, I would like to work with somebody that has my same values, but if I meet somebody that has a different point of view, of course I can choose. I work, I don't work. We can collaborate, we cannot collaborate. But you know, if we are designer, we are architect, but if you are chef in our kitchen, of course we would like to have the best ingredients possible, the best material. But if I open my fridge and I have only 3 things inside, what can I do? I can say, oh, I'm sorry. I will prepare your dinner tomorrow or the day after, or I take the challenge to do something with the 3 ingredients and make something good. Of course, I can succeed maybe, but the challenge is something interesting in my point. So if I have to say something, probably we have to take the best from what we have. That does not mean to accept everything. Of course, there are some limits, but also I think that it's interesting to take the challenge. The same if I think to my students. Of course, I would like to have the best students as possible to make the best project as possible. If I start from a good point, I can go to a further point. You're right. But if somebody is below that, I can try to do something good with them. I think so. I think so. Of course, if you would like to have a protocol, if you would like to have categories, we have to divide the world. The world is white or black, but maybe there are infinity degrees of gray in between. In my opinion, we have to work with that and try to go to white or black if they are the value we would like to have. And about nature, I have to say that nature is everywhere. Of course, here in Rovaniemi, it's evident. Of course, as you go to the Amalfi Coast in Italy, it's evident. But nature is also in the big cities, in Milan or Rio de Janeiro or New York. And reconnecting with nature is a way to see the world. It's a Weltanschauung, it's an attitude. And I agree with you, Päivi, we have to learn to be in this kind of attitude.
Thank you. Wise words, as always, of course. I would like to go back to Michela. You used the word interoperate as well, and obviously with your own initiatives and business as well, but certainly also with the Bauhaus initiative, which has a very wide and open prospect in a way. How would you say, and what would be the ways to further encourage collaboration also between, let's say, the ones who share the values and who do not share the same values? So what has been the development in the Bauhaus initiative from the point of view that are there new ways? Can we sort of see new ways of doing things and collaboration, interoperation, as you said? Can you share your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. One thing I haven't mentioned is that I run an innovation community, a global innovation community of over 8,000 contributors, and this has evolved over 10 years. So for 10 years, for instance, this idea of translating thought into practice on the ground, prototyping and actually creating solutions, testing solutions and seeing how we live with these all these new frontier technologies and then integrating indigenous technologies together with frontier technologies, which is so important. We have been doing this for 10 years, and one of the things that has really been recognized by the European Bauhaus is this idea of a lab, a prototyping lab, that is so important, that rather than sort of sitting around tables and talking, the most important thing is to actually put it into practice and see how it works. It has also become incredibly important for industry to do that, because the sort of frontier technologies that they are dealing with are also throwing up very big surprises, and sometimes the sort of thinking that's required comes from the cultural creative sector, where you can actually question the subject matter from multiple perspectives. And this is so important in order to actually unravel what is happening there. So on that note, I have to mention that, and I think this is very interesting for Rovaniemi in particular, and for the Arctic region, is that already in the Arctic region, we are rolling out the very first hands-on results of the NEB initiative, so the European Bauhaus initiative, we call it NEB for short. The Swedish government, so this is Boverket and ArcDes and the sustainability organization, and several organizations have come together, Formas, for example, and two ministries. They've all joined forces, led by the Swedish national architect Helena Bjarnegård, to actually put some of the European Bauhaus principles into practice by engaging, of course, Vinnova is on this as well. So engaging 11 transdisciplinary teams, generally speaking, led by architects, but definitely including people from different disciplines, sustainability specialists, climate specialists, and then other types of artists like poets and other types of contributors, to actually start to work from the ground up in partnership with 6 municipalities. Kiruna, Gällivare, Luleå and Boden are doing a collaboration, Skellefteå and Umeå. So basically a wonderful start to actually showing how you can implement on the ground, build from the ground up some ideas dealing with both cultural and climate and industrial transformation in these regions. The government, Swedish government, has already confirmed that they will be funding implementation. So I'm very, very happy to be part of this initiative. And in fact, next week we are having 3 days of hands-on sketching and prototyping in situ in these cities together with the governments. So something that perhaps you can consider, and obviously we would be very, very happy to connect with Rovaniemi on this and see how perhaps something similar could be done there.
Thank you, Michela. I think that's a really interesting process you are also describing, and I'm sure there are a lot of people here who are very interested in seeing how it develops further. One question which is related to both this activity and to NEB, the New European Bauhaus in general, is the scaling actually, because the places you mentioned, they are all cities. So how, and this I think is one of the critical points in relation to the Bauhaus related thinking as well. How do you involve the smaller places? How do you involve the villages? Because if you think about Lapland, if you think about close to Milan, the smallest village in Italy has 29 inhabitants. So how, even if urbanization of course is the big issue, and we all often, too often in my mind, we only talk about urbanization easily, but the other side of the world is rural environments, small villages with very small populations. How do you, or how could we activate all of these communities as well?
So I'm very pleased to talk about this, because I am hugely passionate about rolling out the European Bauhaus across the very far and wide regions in Europe. And so what I have been personally working with as part of the high-level roundtable as a representative is, together with Commissioner Ferreira's cohesion team developing cohesion fund strategies, Committee of the Regions and Interreg Europe, about rolling out individual sparks in 100 European regions. So what we are trying to do is create a very agile mechanism that's based on the Wi-Fi for Europe voucher scheme that President Juncker launched when he wanted to deploy Wi-Fi to small town centers very, very fast across Europe. And we are using this legal precedent to look at how we could launch 100 NEB labs across 100 European regions. And we have been, I am very, very pleased to say that very fast, all of those stakeholders, all of the main stakeholders, so the cohesion funds teams, the Committee of the Regions actually developed the idea together with me, and they already introduced it into their next statement. And also Interreg Europe already confirmed that what they would do is ensure that they can pick up the results from those labs and then help them grow. So this is truly a demonstration of how we can concatenate our European instruments in a more of an ecosystemic effect, where you can actually multiply results from the initial ideas on the ground up towards feeding them to big European funding mechanisms. And this has to happen from the furthest corners of Europe. The whole point about the European Bauhaus is that it is radically inclusive, and that these areas of Europe, particularly because they are so volatile to the climate change, and because these are the places where we really may have to see the change from the ground up. This is what we're currently working on. So if you're interested in this, I will also be launching the new program of the Interreg on the 5th of April. I understand there are 3,000 people that have been already registered from the regional governments to attend this, and I will be doing a keynote to show what can be done with our experimental labs on the ground.
Thank you, Michela, and I hope especially Katariina is all ears in relation to this, because that might come to your board if you so wish, with your company's role in supporting businesses develop. So pay attention to what Michela is saying. Very interesting, and I very much appreciate what you say about the need in Europe to make sure, and under the Bauhaus initiative, to make sure that all regions, everyone in Europe is taking part and can be taking part in these initiatives. May I continue with you, Henryk? Interoperational actions, collaboration. You run a consultative business related to actually exactly this as well. So what are the thoughts you would like to share? How do you see the role of interoperational activities, collaboration, and how do you go about it? How do you make sure that you have the best possible collaboration in your activities?
I think this is a really important question. I like the conversations I had from others on values and getting together. Just a brief background. First, 17 years ago, I started to setting up NGOs, like associations, federation of NGOs, and it was very driven by values and people getting together because they wanted to see the same change, but sometimes it was a constraint because there was just one truth and very personal driver. Then I moved, so that was my thesis. Then I was the antithesis. I moved to a business environment when I wanted to get things done cold. First, the value for business and bringing sustainability that channel. And let's say work with companies who want to change products, and I would help them change products in a way that are sustainable. But that was not the common value or common driver. And then we started developing our algorithm so we don't exclude values that could be different, because, for example, we worked for the biggest bank in Poland. As an NGO, my NGO wouldn't decide, but as a company, we know that with working with a corporate environment, we can bring a positive change even if we have different values, because our algorithm focuses on the impact, even if the values are different. And we know that as in Buddhism, you say that the opposite of the greatest truth is also a truth. It's just different. But if the impact or the goal or the goal might be common, then we could achieve and we could be a fit for ourselves. So on the topic on collaboration, especially that we are hyper specialized, so we are usually a misfit, but for some special moments we are a good fit. And I think the biggest value or the biggest challenge is matchmaking. And this is really not about the values, but how can we fit perfectly in the ecosystem so we make the shift that is needed. So I think the biggest challenge so far for collaboration was to matchmake and to find each other. And this is why we've been interested into setting up different think tanks and collaboration to not be a misfits with our hyper specialization, but be fits. And we also published as another organization 5 researches on collaborative networks, on business models, knowledge exchange, and others. So I think the biggest success and the same challenge was the matchmaking. So an algorithm helped a little bit with that. So we didn't focus on projects that were not as a good match, and we strive for the best match possible. It's still a challenge.
Thank you, Henryk. Katariina, is there anything, because in one way I see similarities between the way you work and Change Pilot's work. Is there anything you would like to ask Henryk, or anything you would like to challenge him with?
Well,
too much too soon.
Too much too soon. But I'm also a huge fan of Patagonia, and I work closely with my friend and client Antti Autti, a snowboarder from Rovaniemi. He's a world championships winner, and now he's focusing on the free riding career, and he's speaking about climate issues and responsibility, and he's using his own brand he's using his own brand and own voice to tell about these important things to his followers and his culture. And well, we've just been talking about Patagonia so much together and with all well, many other friends, but maybe I would like to ask you, how is it to work with Patagonia? This is a fun girl moment, but I also respect the way they do, and yeah, that would be nice to hear, because that's what we look from the far often.
Yeah, it's just and Patagonia is just an example where when we get together because of shared goals, and we got together first because of other reasons, and first we invited them for a conference and we talked about similar stuff, and then I love the moment when people call us because they know we might be a fit for them, and this is how I love to be found or to start a relationship. I would like first, I think it's getting to know, and this is what happened here. And then once they know what we do or what I do, where I can help, I like to get that call. Hey, Henryk, I thought about you because we are doing this and this, and you seem to be a match. And actually, that was not a call for me. It was call for my colleague Justina. And just this is, you know, both a goal-oriented, but also a match on how can we help each other complement. And I think this is what we can learn from nature. It's about the ecosystemic match. So we use least effort, we appear in the best possible moment and place. I think this is the challenge of our collaborative networks. How can we find each other exactly when we need? Like, let's say I open a project today, I see a brief, and I can call you just because I know you're a perfect fit in there, or you can call me for an advice, for a cooperation. I wish I could have this like a glass ball that I can find these perfect matches, and we can, you know, be this perfect natural ecosystem that finds each other in a good season, good moment. Hope this helps as an answer.
Are you happy with the answer?
Yes, maybe this was a bit off topic, but on the other hand, I think, thank you, Henryk. My question was off topic, but on the other hand, I think of Patagonia that it's a company that has been inspired many to make a change, and it's kind of a lighthouse in a way to showing where you can go with your business if you're brave enough, and that was very nice to hear how is to work with them. And I think we need this kind of companies, and it requires of courage to really stand on what you do. So.
That's absolutely true, and I think it's quite relevant to what we are talking and discussing here, because in the end, of course, we work with individual organizations or individuals. And there are different ways we can move ahead with them. But this also, I think, it relates to there's sort of a scale issue here as well. For companies, for businesses, you work with your collaborators, and you create a network, you create a circle of clients, and you build trust. But that's also true with, you know, the wider scale, with initiatives like the Bauhaus initiative, which in the end, again, is collaboration between organizations. The difference with the sort of the grassroots level is that you scale up the collaboration, but the issues that either support or disrupt collaboration, they are very much the same. So it's important to notice this difference. Any questions from the audience or reactions? Have you heard anything you would like to react to? Either support or challenge? Not at the moment. But what I would like to discuss with you, still with the remaining time, is the next challenge, in a way, because we are in a very challenging moment. We are hardly done with the pandemic. We have spoken a lot about the effects and also what the pandemic, the experiences from the pandemic have accelerated, what they might have prevented or stopped. And now we are in a situation where next to the pandemic, we have a drastic situation in Europe with the war in Ukraine. And I know that this definitely is something that changes a lot of things as well. So from your point of view, in the context of sustainability, climate change mitigation, how do you see this affects, the changed situation affects what you do? Or what are the challenges that are coming up with this current situation we would need to react next? And if I may start with Henryk, because Henryk lives in Poland, and of course the reality with Poland at the moment is that it's the country in Europe who is very close to the Ukrainian border, the situation, and you have a lot of people, a new population even, I might say. So what is the impact, and what is the impact on your work or thinking at the moment?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Just to give you a context, it's been a month now that we have been neighbors and accepting refugees from Ukraine. 1 week ago, it was, I think, around 2 million that we accepted. Some big cities like Krakow, every 4th person is Ukrainian. Capital, every 10th person is Ukrainian, and that's the data for last 10 days ago. With the support of my mom, we gave rooms to in the one apartment that we usually rent to Ukrainians, and we help in many ways we can. But this is not, this is very emotional and just happening right now. But the biggest question is how migration as a standard thing, status quo, will happen in our ecosystems, because migration is not just happening now, it will continue. And how can we, for example, learn from nature and use this ecosystem that has empty villages in some places and overcrowded cities in other places, and migration is such a potential, and people migrating, it's such a value. I feel very humbled to learn things from people who before I didn't have in my neighborhood. So not it's really such a beautiful mix. European Union would be happy to have that exchange going on, but of course it's a challenge. It's a sad thing, and to be honest, since these few weeks, I stress less about the things I do, the things I have, because they don't really matter so much. My work I still do, but what's the impact of little better product or a little more sustainable when we have more ecosystemic things to deal with? And that's really bringing an attention into new spaces, like already mentioned in the topic of materials or raw materials, or dependence on the linear system. So I would like to see this as an opportunity to focus and attention what really matters. It's not the sales or the growth. We can actually sustain and be sustainable by looking into a little bit different direction and finding that sustainability value in, let's say, less energy cost or better materials, because now we have to look at that space. And I really like that moment when a question arises. With pandemic, it was future scenarios, so we could look at other things than the preferable vision for 5 years. We could also look at migration and other stuff that will happen. And now war also brought us to a good conversation on on materials, and to be honest, this is the very nice entry point for some companies to make change, because this is very tangible. We can relate to that. When I talked to my client, he said, okay, this project can wait that we're working on, because now I'm figuring out where to get steel from. So really, it's a good moment to talk about that stuff. Yeah, so maybe that's on that topic, and I really think it's a moment that we focus on things that matter more.
Thank you, thank you, Henryk. I'm sure that many of us here and behind the screen on the other platform, they would definitely agree. But I think it's important to say aloud, because on a general note, it's important that we recognize that when something radical and unexpected happens, we need to react. And there's often an immediate reaction as well. And the sudden changes, whether they are related to the action, the war we are talking about now, or whether it's related to something else surprising, we create strategies to react. And you nicely, beautifully described your own strategy. Michela, your thoughts on this?
I mean, first of all, it's commendable what we just heard, and it is wonderful to hear these kinds of things, because this is the sort of the strength of the people on the ground who actually really take action and do the right thing and keep the values at the forefront. I can also tell you that from high level, what I expected to happen as soon as we were warned about this was about to happen. In fact, when we had a meeting with the president back at end of January, we were warned that this was rolling out literally. And I thought that as soon as it explodes, it will put the European Bauhaus on the back burner as a luxury initiative in comparison. And this is the sort of strange thing that happens in some people's minds, where, for instance, when you talk about aesthetics, how could that possibly have anything to do with survival? In fact, what it is the ultimate expression of life, and therefore is something we should always be striving towards. It is something that happens when we have peace, and therefore something that we fight for. It is part of the strengths of culture that we build together. So what was really impressive for me was that even in the European Parliament, where we had an intervention just a couple of weeks ago, the new European Bauhaus principles were actually mentioned in conjunction with the strategy that is resulting from the recent horrific events in the Ukraine. There has never been a more important time to galvanize people on the ground. And also we had an emergency meeting with a high-level roundtable where we discussed one of the things that are happening immediately as it broke out was that our Polish member immediately spoke to Shigeru Ban, a Japanese architect who is famous for the design of shelters, temporary shelters and private spaces for families, for instance, in crisis situations such as earthquakes or war zones. And they have immediately activated deployment to Poland, to the regions where the immigrants are coming in. It is important to note that 2.5 million people crossing border in as much as sort of 10 days is really striking as a comparison to the 1 million in total Syrian refugees that came in during the previous immigration, well, as we call it, their crisis. Now, this is a very important point that we decided amongst us, and we actually consulted with each other and with the decision makers, that we should never call this a crisis of immigration. We should actually call it as an influx of talent and intelligence that can contribute to the European economy. And therefore, some things have already been put into place where, for example, from our member of the high-level roundtable from Slovakia, we know that 100 students from Ukraine have already joined a Slovakian university. So basically, one of the things that we can do is with these, for instance, labs that we encourage, both in terms of joining forces and something that you were saying, let's collaborate together and let's find a way that we can meet with people whom we wouldn't otherwise meet, who might be sympathetic. Both large organizations like Patagonia, owners of wonderful design agencies in the Arctic, owners of or other people who run design agencies in Poland, and people who are immigrating, who are intelligent, who are educated, they should all meet in a space of common understanding on the ground and create together. That is very, very clear, I think, to us. And this is where wonderful things happen. So we need to turn this situation around into something that galvanizes everybody to create a better future.
Thank you, Michela. Important words. Can I have your reactions, first Katariina and Alessandro, on this as well? We are getting to the close of the discussion, but we are talking about a very important topic.
Yes, and thank you for sharing your ideas, Henryk and Michela, and I can totally agree with them, and this has been horrible last week's heartbreaking time. What I also think, like Michela, that we should all get together, and it's not about having kind of boundaries with our minds anymore. It's just putting our ideas and thoughts and intelligence into use to accelerate this green transition and also creating solutions. And what I've been personally thinking with my small company, that I will be the one who helps even more to with the transition to green energy. So by applying money and to companies that they can rip off their ties with not sustainable energies, and also to talk with my clients that they don't have to be shy with their responsibility messages or actions anymore, because now it's the time that we just need to talk about it, because this horrible happening is a lot of connected with the energy issues and the climate change as well. So yes, we need to act fast and act together and be creative and be brave.
Thank you, Katariina. Alessandro.
I'm really sorry to say that the pandemic effects and the war effects are good in such a way, are good because now we need to do something, not only to say something, but we need to do something. And I think about the friend from Ukraine, but also the friend from Russia, because war is making victims everywhere in the civil society. And all the effects, the increasing of the price, the crisis of materials, now is something that we have to face, and we have to face in a practical way, and we have to use our capacity to design the future project. It seems to throw something in the distance, in the future. Now we have to do, and I think that everyone can do a little part to improve the environment, the sustainability, but also the civil society where we have to live together.
Thank you, Alessandro. Thank you to all of you, Henryk, Michela, Alessandro, Katariina, and everyone in the audience. I would like to close this with saying that for me, in fact, the takeout of this dialogue relates first to values, because it has been about values from minute one to the final minute. And maybe the takeaway is prioritizing as you, Henryk, said, I think we are all doing, and we need to do prioritizing in situations where sudden changes happen. They are the checkpoints for our values as well, as much as they are checkpoints for our actions. And that brings me to a thought and even a proposal. Maybe what we should discuss next in the very near future is, as a design community, and design meant very large, diverse, how can we also become, instead of reactive, because our actions at the moment are also reactive because we are in a sudden situation, but how can we change our actions to proactive actions? And from that point of view, what I'm sort of thinking of, starting to think of, that should we initiate discussions and actions, both discussions are needed perhaps as well, to reach actions on what can design do for peace, and how we can turn ourselves into proactive actors. So if this seems something that you would be willing to take on, feel free. I think it's important that we start, as you said about future, Alessandro, we need to, besides the actual situation, we would also need to think how this will not happen again. And that's where design is needed, to start creating scenarios in collaboration with everyone else. And perhaps the Bauhaus, new Bauhaus is a good framework for that as well. So I say thank you to all of you, thank you to everyone in the audience, and once more, special thanks for all of you experts taking time and sharing your valuable insight and thoughts. And finally, there's something Arctic Design Week is doing for peace as well. On Sunday, the last day of the Design Week, there will be planned earlier already a fashion show and a concert, and the concert on Sunday in Lordy Square, at Lordy Square, will be a concert for peace in collaboration with UNICEF and Red Cross, and Lordy Square, and the one and only Mr. Lordy, who won the Eurovision Song Contest in 2006, the monstery heavy metal performer, will be there supporting peace on Sunday evening as well. I hope you all can take part in that. So thank you, everyone. And goodbye to you there in Poland, in the UK at the moment, and oh, you already knew Meo. Okay, so yeah, but I know that you will be connected to the UK soon. So
that's
so
correct,
yeah,
Scotland.
in spirit as well. And thank you to you as well. And I hope everyone a good rest of the Arctic Design Week.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks.